There's a creature drifting through the ocean right now that might have already solved death. Not metaphorically, not theoretically, actually solved it. And it's not some deep sea leviathan or ancient shark. It's a jellyfish roughly the size of your pinky nail. This organism can age backward. When it reaches the end of its life cycle, instead of dying, it simply resets. It reverts to its juvenile form and starts over, again and again, potentially forever. Scientists call this biological immortality, and it breaks every rule we thought governed complex life. But here's what makes this truly unsettling. We've known about this ability since the 1990s, and we still can't explain how it's possible. The species is Turritopsis dohrnii, commonly called the immortal jellyfish. And to understand why its existence is so profoundly strange, we need to start with what death actually means for most living things. Every multicellular organism follows a script. Birth, growth, reproduction, decline, death. This isn't just biology, it's physics, entropy. The second law of thermodynamics states that systems move toward disorder. Cells accumulate damage, DNA degrades, proteins misfold, the machinery breaks down. Death isn't a design flaw, it's the inevitable endpoint of complexity. Except Turritopsis dohrnii found a loophole. When this jellyfish faces stress, starvation, injury, or old age, it doesn't try to repair itself the way other animals do. Instead, it does something that shouldn't be possible in a differentiated organism. It transforms its adult cells back into stem cells. Then it rebuilds itself from scratch as a polyp. The juvenile stage jellyfish pass through before becoming adults. Imagine a butterfly dissolving back into a caterpillar, then growing into a butterfly again. That's essentially what's happening here. The process is called transdifferentiation, and it's one of the rarest phenomena in biology. Most cells in your body are locked into their roles. A heart cell stays a heart cell, a neuron stays a neuron. Once differentiation happens during development, there's no going back. Your cells have committed to their function. They can't unspecialize. But Turritopsis dohrnii cells can. Muscle cells convert into nerve cells. Digestive cells become reproductive cells. The entire body plan dissolves and reassembles into something younger. It's not healing. It's not regeneration. It's a complete cellular rewrite. Scientists first documented this in a lab in the 1990s when researcher Christian Sommer noticed something bizarre. Jellyfish he expected to die were reverting to earlier life stages instead. At first he thought it was a fluke, then it kept happening. Further studies confirmed what seemed impossible. Under the right conditions, this species could theoretically bypass death indefinitely. Now, before we get carried away, let's clarify what immortality actually means here. Turritopsis dohrnii isn't invincible. It can still be eaten. It can still be killed by disease or environmental toxins. What it appears to have escaped is aging-related death. Senescence, the slow biological collapse that kills most animals even when nothing else does. This raises an obvious question. If one jellyfish can do this, why can't others? Why can't we? The answer lies in how cellular identity is maintained. In most animals, including humans, cells are regulated by complex genetic switches that lock in their function. These switches, controlled by chemical markers on DNA, determine which genes are active and which are silenced. Once these patterns are set during development, they're extremely difficult to reverse. Your body doesn't want cells randomly changing jobs. That instability leads to cancer. But Turritopsis dohrnii has somehow evolved a system that can safely revert these genetic switches without triggering runaway cell division. Its genome contains specific genes that allow controlled transdifferentiation. When the jellyfish initiates this process, it's not chaos, it's orchestrated. Cells don't just randomly transform. They follow a precise sequence, rebuilding the organism in reverse developmental order. What makes this even stranger is that immortality in Turritopsis dohrnii isn't automatic, it's conditional. The jellyfish has to actively trigger the process, usually in response to stress. If conditions are favourable, it will age and reproduce normally like any other jellyfish. But when things go wrong, when food runs out or the environment turns hostile, it hits the reset button. This suggests something profound. Aging might not be as inevitable as we think. It might be a strategy, not a sentence. For most species, aging and death create evolutionary advantages. They clear space for the next generation. They allow populations to adapt quickly through generational turnover. But Turritopsis dohrnii exists in an ecological niche where the rules are different, where the ability to wait out bad conditions by regressing offers a survival edge. And here's where things get deeply interesting. Turritopsis dohrnii isn't the only organism playing with the boundaries of life and death. It's just the most dramatic example. Some flatworms can regenerate entire bodies from tiny fragments. Lobsters produce an enzyme called telomerase that repairs DNA damage indefinitely, effectively making them biologically immortal until something external kills them. Even some vertebrates push the limits. The Greenland shark can live over 400 years. Bowhead whales reach similar ages. Naked mole rats seem resistant to cancer and don't follow normal aging patterns. But none of these creatures can reverse aging the way Turritopsis dohrnii does. And none can turn back the clock on cellular differentiation. That ability remains unique, and it's forcing scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about multicellular life. Because if cells can be safely reprogrammed in one organism, the blueprint exists. The question isn't whether biological immortality is possible. We're looking at it. The question is why evolution didn't favour this strategy more widely, and whether the mechanisms could ever be translated to other species, to mammals, to us. The implications stretch far beyond curiosity. Understanding how Turritopsis dohrnii resets its cells could unlock insights into cancer treatment, regenerative medicine, and age-related disease. But there's a deeper puzzle beneath all of this, one that goes beyond practical applications. If death can be optional for even a single complex organism, what does that mean for the supposed universality of aging? Most organisms treat aging as inevitable. Damage accumulates, systems fail, entropy wins. But Turritopsis dohrnii suggests something unsettling. What if aging is less about biological necessity and more about evolutionary compromise? What if death became dominant not because it's unavoidable, but because it's efficient? Consider the logic. In most environments, resources are limited. Populations can't expand infinitely. If individuals never died, ecosystems would stagnate. The young couldn't replace the old. Genetic variation would slow. Adaptation would crawl. Death, in this framework, isn't a flaw, it's a feature that accelerates evolution. But jellyfish don't follow the same rules. They drift through oceans where predation, starvation, and environmental swings are the real threats. Living longer doesn't clog the system when most individuals get eaten anyway. So natural selection found a different optimization. Instead of investing in repair mechanisms that merely slow aging, Turritopsis dohrnii evolved something far stranger. A total reset. Yet here's what keeps researchers awake at night. If this capability exists in jellyfish, why didn't it spread? Why aren't oceans filled with immortal creatures cycling endlessly through life stages? The answer might be cost. Transdifferentiation is expensive. It requires energy. It demands genetic machinery that has to be maintained even when it's not being used. And it imposes risks. Every time cells reprogram, there's a chance something goes wrong. A mutation slips through. A regulatory gene misfires. Cancer is essentially uncontrolled transdifferentiation. Cells that forget their identity and start dividing without limits. Turritopsis dohrnii walks a razor's edge. It has to allow massive cellular reprogramming without triggering the chaos that kills most organisms attempting anything similar. How it maintains that balance remains one of the great unsolved puzzles in developmental biology. How does the jellyfish ensure that every cell transforms correctly, in sequence, without a single one going rogue. Turritopsis dohrnii doesn't have a brain. It has a nerve net, a decentralized nervous system without centralized control. So when it makes the decision to revert, what exactly is deciding? There's no command center issuing orders. The process is distributed across the entire organism. Cells communicate through chemical signals, coordinating a transformation that affects every tissue simultaneously. This implies something profound about biological decision-making. Consciousness isn't required for complex choices. A brainless jellyfish can assess its environment, evaluate stress levels, and execute a multi-stage developmental reversal, all without anything resembling thought. Can any of this be applied to humans? The short answer is no. Not remotely, not anytime soon. Human cells are locked into their identities far more rigidly than jellyfish cells. Our complexity demands stability. We have 37 trillion cells organized into hundreds of specialized types. Letting them freely reprogram would be catastrophic. However, partial applications might be possible. Researchers are already exploring induced pluripotency, a technique that reverts adult cells into stem cells in laboratory conditions. It's not immortality, but it's a step toward controlled cellular reprogramming. Cells can be coaxed backward under the right conditions. The challenge is doing it safely inside a living organism. Turritopsis dohrnii has had millions of years to refine its approach. We're trying to reverse engineer the process in decades. Still, the existence of biological immortality changes the conversation. It shifts aging from an immutable law to a solvable problem, not easily solvable, not soon, but theoretically possible. And that reframing matters. Because for most of human history, death was treated as metaphysically necessary, the one certainty. But Turritopsis dohrnii is living proof that complex multicellular life can escape that trap. Which brings us to a darker consideration. If humans ever did achieve something resembling biological immortality, would we want it? Population growth already strains resources. Imagine a world where no one dies of old age, where political leaders, corporate executives, and cultural influencers never step aside. Turritopsis dohrnii doesn't worry about these problems. It lives in an ocean where predation and environmental chaos keep populations in check. Remove those pressures and even immortal jellyfish would face ecological collapse. So perhaps the real lesson from Turritopsis dohrnii isn't about extending lifespan. It's about understanding the flexibility of biological systems, the fact that development can run backward, that cellular identity is negotiable, that aging is a program, not a law. These insights could reshape medicine without requiring full immortality. The jellyfish isn't a blueprint for human immortality. It's a proof of concept that biology is far more malleable than we assumed. Death remains universal for now, but universality isn't the same as inevitability. Turritopsis dohrnii floats through the ocean, aging and regressing, cycling endlessly between stages. A creature that shouldn't exist, doing something that shouldn't be possible. And every time it transforms, it asks the same quiet question. If one organism found the way out, what's really stopping the rest of us? We've been looking at mortality the wrong way. For centuries, we treated death as the price of complexity, the inevitable cost of being more than a single cell. But Turritopsis dohrnii suggests we've been confusing constraint with law. Evolution didn't make death necessary. It made death convenient. And somewhere in the genome of a jellyfish, the size of a pencil eraser, lies the code that proves the difference. Whether we ever crack that code, whether we should, those are different questions entirely. But now we know the answer exists, and knowing changes everything.